when I first started mixing live, you'd show up to a club and there'd be 2 compressors and 2 gates, and you'd have to figure out what you wanted to compress and gate. Obviously, you want to gate some drums, but which ones? And you wanted something compressed, but what were you going to compress? So you really had to think about and know what was going to benefit from what you had. And I'm still a firm believer in that.
Welcome to Audio Technology Magazine's ISO Booth podcast, where we phone audio engineers and producers at home. And thanks to the pandemic lockdown, they answer. Hey everyone, Chris here, and welcome to another Audio Technology ISO Booth. In the world of live sound luminaries, front of house engineer Jim Ebdon is right in the top echelon. He's mixed everybody from Aerosmith, Annie Lennox, Sting, Prince, and in more recent years, Sam Smith and Maroon 5. And they've kept him well and truly busy over the last 5-ish years. Welcome, Jim. How are you going?
Great, thank you. It was an awesome introduction. Thank you.
Some of it may have been correct.
No, it was perfect.
Oh, okay, cool. I guess famously, your career arc started as a T-boy in a London recording studio. Which studio is that, by the way?
That was Surrey Sound Studios in Leatherhead, actually. It was just outside London,
right, gotcha.
which was famous for the Police.
Okay, so that's where they would take up residency for months on end, and
they recorded their first 2 albums there. Yeah,
right. So did your paths cross at any point?
They did, because the guy that owned the studio was their producer for the first 3 records, and when I joined that studio as a T-boy, they'd finished working with him and they'd moved on to Hugh Padgham. But they came back to that studio to do like B, so you had to do B-sides in those days. So they came back and did some, tried to write something, and they actually re-recorded something. So that was my introduction to that.
Right, and then that studio, what happened that led you to life of the live sound engineer?
Well, I would stay late, and I became a studio engineer and learned, mic technique, and saw amazing producers and engineers come through. So that's how I learned, how to record. Okay.
Was there like an SSL E series at that time in there?
No,
or did you know you had something else?
No, when I first started there was an old MCI console, and then they bought a Harrison console. And I don't know why they sold that so quickly. And then they bought I think it was a money issue, but then they bought an old TAC console.
Okay. Yep.
And then sadly the studio went bankrupt, and I was forced to go freelance. But I progressed to be an engineer, and I've been doing quite well actually, just recording some albums with some people. And one in particular was an old English rock band called Wishbone Ash. And I was recording a record with them, and they said to me, we're doing a festival in Germany at the weekend. You want to come over and mix it? I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah. So we get out to this festival site, and it's our turn to sound check. And I wasted our 20-minute sound check on the kick drum sound, because being a studio engineer, all day on a kick drum. So no one said to me, "You've got 20 minutes to get this working." So that was my first shock of a live sound engineer. It was very, very different.
I expect you, you learned to run very quickly.
I had to very quickly, yeah. But they were great, and they were older guys, and they taught me the ropes of touring. And the reason why I stuck with touring is because the studio I was working at went bankrupt, and I tried doing the rounds of the London studios as a freelancer, and it was at that time when studios just started closing down because they were too expensive to maintain, because all this new like Pro Tools and Fairlights had just come out, and people were favoring those to record with, so the big studios were going out of business. And I just ended, the phone just rang to come and mix gigs. So that's what I did.
You're in a privileged position where you have seen some huge generational shifts in the way we mix bands and produce bands. And you're also one of those engineers with that much experience who still really loves to ride the zeitgeist of gear. You're not sort of that guy still wishing you had a Heritage, 3000 and 20 tons of turbo sound. But I think the first time I met you, actually the only time I met you was in the late 90s, and you were in a huge empty arena in Manchester doing production rehearsals for Wet, Wet, Wet.
Yeah.
And I imagine back, can you remember what you were using there? Would that have been Martin Sound?
I probably would have. No, we used a company called SSE from Birmingham. And in those days, it would have been a big MT4, Electro Voice MT4 PA system, and most likely a Midas XL4.
Gotcha.
That was to be
and you weren't to know that in a few short years, you would somebody would start talking to you about VDOSK.
Right. I heard about VDOSK, and Supertramp were touring with a VDOSK rig.
With our very own Angus Davidson, who lives down the road. Yeah.
So I don't know how many years ago that was, but they played at the Albert Hall, and I managed to, score a pass from somebody and go down there and check it out. And I'd recently been in the Albert Hall, and it was just a nightmare in those days with, how did we do the sound at the Albert Hall? It's usually a center cluster. No, but there's this little skinny column of speakers left and right. And it can't be true. And I went, and I was, I remember just like, wait, where's this sound coming from? Those, because they look pretty small, 12 VDOSK aside. I think that was probably all that was there at that time. And I was shocked. It was amazing. And that was a really good sounding show, really good. Great mix.
And did you instantly go away saying, thinking I've got to be mixing on this system, or was it like a slow burn for you as far as the opportunities?
I really don't remember the timeline as to when I started using it, but it probably wasn't that long. It seemed to become popular very quickly. I mean, everybody seemed to be wanting it. And I did I think a pop tour in the UK with one of the first VDOS. I think Lars Brogard had got a VDOS rig, and he got hold of it somehow, and I think I used that for a few weeks run. And that was it, really. I don't think I've ever used anything else other than in terms of line array.
Sure.
I don't think it was just line arrays from there on. I didn't use any other conventional sound systems.
Is there anything that you miss about conventional sound systems?
No. Nothing.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
Have you? It's interesting that we're now in the midst of another big generational shift with immersive, and L-acoustics is kind of one of the prime movers there as well. What's been your exposure to immersive? I
think it's a really interesting concept, or whatever it is at the moment. We, funny enough, this last summer, 2020 summer, we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs, wondering what to do with ourselves. And I got involved with a couple of guys doing crowd noise for sports.
Okay.
And obviously I live in America now, and the baseball season was getting underway, and our plan was to try and do immersive sound of crowd noise for the players on the field. And we actually went to the Los Angeles Dodgers and set up an Elisa immersive system. We didn't hang anything; we just stacked it, and then we put it around the field, or like on the first concourse level. And the players loved it. They were practicing, we're hitting shots, and the crowd would be screaming. And we really got this dialed in very well. But that's a whole nother story. But we were using the immersive sound system.
Yeah. Okay.
Long story short, they didn't take the league didn't want to pay the money for this. But Fox Sports loved what we did, so they got us in the studio down the road here, and we sweetened all their sporting events for 6 months.
So what were you bringing to that mix? Like just the fact that you'd properly recorded crowd sound in a sort of a surround manner?
We had compiled a lot of surround sound. We actually got like younger guys to play the sounds, to be the audience. only because they're more focused and they were used to pressing buttons quickly and totally into the sport. And I kind of just, and a couple of other guys we got in, we just oversaw the sound, that interface between us and the network. So we would make sure they were getting a surround feed from us, and they would got all the levels properly, and then, and we'd mix it appropriately with dynamic according to the game,
So, okay, so I'm not sure. I'm going to sort of ask some dumb questions here. So,
there's never a dumb question.
Are you saying that you were like performing the crowd sound?
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
cue.
Absolutely.
So where was this crowd?
In a Ableton computer.
So, but okay. So what did this crowd? When did you record? Like,
we were a group of sound engineers that had lots of recordings of different emotions of crowds.
Right.
And Fred Vogler, who is the head sound engineer at the Hollywood Bowl, this was his baby, and he had actually, over the years, for some reason, recorded a lot of sporting crowds. So he had sports crowd, just like libraries of various levels of emotions. And we basically put them in Ableton and just got a MIDI keyboard and triggered those sounds. And it was as simple as that. So here's what the Major League Baseball did. They got Sony station sounds, put them on an iPad, and sent the iPad to every club around the country and go, there you go, there's your sounds, your crowd sounds. And it was 6 different sounds. And, and they would play them on their very weathered sound systems of these stadiums. And it just, 9 times out of 10 sounded like just white noise nothingness. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's what we did through the summer. We did all the baseball and the soccer here.
Okay.
And some NFL.
Right. So even at the Super Bowl, was that augmented?
The sound would probably, we weren't anything to do with the Super Bowl, but we did do the World Series baseball.
Okay.
So I was the sound engineer for the crowd at the World Series baseball.
All right. So you just to be clear, you didn't press the keys. You had a young guy, in inverted commas,
who was really into the game,
who knew. Right. Okay.
So we had a few of those guys, but there's one particular guy. He was so good. He knew the game of baseball better than half the players on the field, and his anticipation was amazing, and just the way he played the crowd was fantastic. Including,
like, there would be villains as well as good shots. So
boos. We would obviously favour the home team, which we were told to by Fox Sports. Just make the home team give them some more love. Or someone come running in. We've had a complaint. Give the other team some more love. Oh, okay. It was amusing. We had a good time there for 6 months.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. So can you tell me, just a little bit about what you're up to? So when was the last time that you mixed a show in front of real life human beings, and what are you sort of doing at the moment, when you're not obviously on the road?
The last show I mixed was last year on March the 1st. I think it was Mardi Gras in Sydney. That was the last show I mixed. Just flew back to America and everything shut down a few days later. So since then, I kind of, like everybody else, for the first month or so, just was in quarantine and wondering what was happening, and like everyone else, and then thought, oh, this is ridiculous. Something's got to happen. This is, so. But I'd already got a console from SSL and put it in my studio at home. The morning of lockdown, I managed to get over there and get one out. And through the summer, we as I said, we did that the crowd sports, which kind of naturally just sort of played its course, really. They started letting more people into sporting events here in America, not so much California, but some of the other states. and then I started to get people call me up. Hey, can you mix this? The business kind of started slowly again, more on the production level. Like TV shows were doing it, and now these live streams suddenly became available to people, and of course they're mixing them. They're recording them, and it's like, oh, we need someone to mix this. And so I got some phone calls from a couple of really good bands. And
did I hear that you are working with Justin Bieber?
Yeah, that led me to Justin Bieber. They were looking for a broadcast mixer for a New Year's Eve gig, and so they gave me a call about that, and I went in and mixed this New Year's Eve show. What
did that look like?
Well, it was Justin Bieber performing with his band and dancers on the rooftop of the Beverly Hills Hilton.
So just like any other regular gig, basically.
Just like a regular gig, except it was on a rooftop with some scaffolding. Anyway, the audience were in the balconies of the hotel, and COVID regulations, etc. I think there was 4 people per balcony.
That's awesome. Were they just guests, or were they paying one night only?
I think they had to pay for the privilege of going, and maybe there were hotel guests. Maybe it was a package deal. I don't know. It was sponsored by T-Mobile.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea, and at least it was a COVID-friendly audience.
So where were you mixing that gig? Sorry, just to.
Right. Yeah, I set up a makeshift mix room in a room at the hotel. So I was away from everyone else, and which is great. We just set up in there and recorded it. And I actually got one of my guys who does the audience sweetening. He came and did the extra crowd noise for it, because just pointing some shotgun mics at some hotel balconies wasn't very. All we were getting was reflection from the PA. And very little audience, so we did cheat a little bit and sweeten the audience.
Was he like the baseball expert?
No, he was a music expert that became a boxing expert. He did all the boxing for Fox Sports.
Right. Okay, but he still had a feel for when there might be screaming girls.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was more cocktail party kind of audience. Wasn't
okay.
Screaming.
Okay. So the clink of glasses.
Yeah, it was golf claps. So that it led on to more broadcast work with Justin. So he's doing we're right in the middle of recording something for Spotify. And it's filmed as well on a clever video stage called an XR stage over at PRG, and we're doing some live track. He's great because he wants his band to play and he wants to sing live and he wants it to be live.
Yeah,
so which is fantastic, and so he's keeping busy, which is nice. Yeah.
And what's Is it fun? Is it fun to mix? I'm guessing that they're an amazing band.
He's got some good tunes, I got to say. It's a fun band to mix. They're very good players, and all guys from LA here, I think. And yeah.
Yep. And the reason why we're sitting in your kitchen rather than your studio is that you've basically packed up your studio to do this work. Is that?
Yeah, my studio is a very portable studio, and it's basically in the box, But I have a rack of effects and just my stuff I like to take because I know it works, and I know that I take it with me, so it's everything I need. And the console is supplied for me, and I can take my own speakers and speaker stands.
Yeah, what do you mix on? What speakers? Sorry.
I've been using the Neumann 310s with a sub, which and now they have this new software which will time align the speakers and room correction software.
Yeah, right. Ping your room and
right. It's fantastic because I've been moving so many rooms in the last 2 months. I need some consistency with the monitoring, and that seems to work really well. And I like the sound of those speakers. Easy to listen.
Just like by way of a word from our sponsors, like I gather one of the reasons why you came to mind was in my inbox was the fact that you have taken on some Austrian audio microphones. We I have to confess, we had them in the office. We loved the 818. Thought it was an amazing, first microphone, as it were, for the company. So you've got those in the.
I've got a pair of 818s. I've got a pair of probably the first ones that were made, which I'm using for overheads. Well, actually, in this case, they're kind of underheads for some reason. It's a whole other story. But I love them. I think they're great. I mean, I just put them there and just don't even have to think about it. Just put them in the right spot, and it's sounds like overheads capturing a drum kit. I haven't got into any of the clever stuff that you can do with them. Because I felt I needed to.
That's right. It's kind of got its own app. It's like
it's got an app, and you can change the stuff and the configurator and the dongles and stuff like that. So I'm sure if I had more time to actually play with that, I probably might. But I'm just using them as a regular microphone, which seems to work fine. Yeah,
and clearly you're using the SSL console currently. It's like you've made a switch to SSL sort of pretty much holus bolus, or at the moment using something else.
Well, no, I'm back on another brand of console only because I kind of inherited it.
You're allowed to mention brands, Jim.
What's a Digico console, an SD7, which is what I left to go and mix on SSLs.
Yeah,
and Digico consoles are fantastic. There's there's SSL there, and Digico are just out of this world consoles, live consoles. And so I inherited this SD7, and I like it, and it's working, and we're just in this groove now. And maybe I'll change back to an SSL when I got some time.
Sounds good. So there's clearly.
Said that, I mixed through a bunch of SSL outboard products, the Fusion and a bus compressor.
So what's in your rack that you take around? You've got a bus. You got a bus compressor and from SSL, and what else?
Yeah, I take with me two Universal Audio live racks, which are my plugins, which I don't really use a lot of. I just use, I don't want a rack of 4 API 2500s or 4 Tube Techs or LA2As. And
who would want that?
I mean, it would be lovely, but let's be practical. So what is in the rack is 2 UAD real-time racks, 2 Bricasti M7s reverbs, 1 Tube Tech CL1B, another Tube Tech, which is the stereo multiband compressor, an API 250, an SSL bus compressor, and an SSL Fusion.
That's not a bad little rack, actually.
It's not a bad rack. It seems to do the trick for me. Yeah.
So what do you think is, as far as processing in the last 5-10 years, what do you find indispensable? What's kind of come along that you really, really, really wish you had 25 years ago?
I think probably, I'd have to say plugins. But then again, I try not to use them so much. I rather use proper real outboard gear. And the plugins I use aren't automated. They're used like outboard gear. So I don't create snapshots with them. When I first started mixing live, you'd show up to a club and there'd be 2 compressors and 2 gates. And you'd have to figure out what you wanted to compress and gate. Obviously, you want to gate some drums, but which ones? And you wanted something compressed, but what were you going to compress? So you really had to think about and know what was going to benefit from what you had. And I'm still a firm believer in that. I don't believe in just throwing a dozen plugins on something just because they're available. I don't compute with that at all. And I heard a podcast about delaying channels on a console to get all your plugins to line up and smart being on each channel. I'm like, why don't you just get the sound right in the first place and then get a good sounding console? And then you don't have to use all those plugins. That's just where my head's at. But, I do believe there is a place for plugins, and they are extremely useful. There's some great tools available.
Yeah, I do wonder about, sort of multi-band compression. And, when you think about, back in the days where you might have 130 dB of Marshall coming through your vocal mic, and the stage was noisier than the auditorium and all that stuff, and trying to get a vocal over the background cacophony, and now you can have a studio mic in front of a vocalist, and you can have sort of amazing sort of dynamic EQ and multi-band compression, and finesse it to the nth degree. Is that sort of, I guess you in your position you sort of take that for granted, but you must kind of pinch yourself at times.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep it old school, and there are some very useful tools for exactly what you were saying. If just quiet vocals, very quiet singers, getting them above. There's some useful tools within the plugin platform, to be able to do that. And there are some crazy effects and just crazy stuff, which is fine. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. Then there's your tools, and they're abundant, But I just like a compressor's a compressor to me, and it's and it's, you choose which one you want to use, and then fine tune it from there.
Sure. So
but I like the old stuff that's been a compressor for 40 years. That's all it does. That's what it wakes up in the morning to do, and probably nothing ever been touched on it.
I guess you can kind of get a bit lost with when you're talking about sort of adding sort of 2% of some kind of tape emulation across the mix bus, and whether you're using the Ampex or the MCI or the 15 IPS versus the 30, and you're kind of like, right, how can you even hear that?
You're kidding yourself half the time. Just listen to the final mix and see what's going on. Take a step back and don't mix with your eyes.
Okay, so I'm a cheapskate, and we're on Zoom, so we're going to get chopped off pretty quickly. Okay. But the last time we
do another one if you want.
We could.
Yeah, I don't mind. I've got time.
Well, just let's pretend we're about to get cut off. I'm never going to speak to you again. So my final question is: last time we spoke, 25 years ago, I seem to recall you were enjoying a fat cigar. I reckon it was all like an affectation. When I arrived in the arena, you were kicking back your feet on the Midas XL4. You had a huge stogie in your hand, looking like sort of the mafia.
Wow!
So you've obviously given away the cigars.
Times have changed. I don't smoke anymore. I'm not such a dick as I used to be. Pretentious as I used to be, or big-headed, all those other things. I think definitely with age and
wisdom.
The wisdom is, I'm just very grateful to be here today.
Well, it's been amazing to talk to you, and thanks for your time. And hopefully we get to talk again before 2045.
Oh, well, if we're talking then, has a miracle happened.